The following BLTV program is brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Please enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Seize Your Business podcast. My name is Bryan McDonald of OnPurpos Growth. And today I have Noel Elfant of General Counsel Practice. And what we're talking about is some strategies and tactics that small and medium-sized business owners can use to grab a hold of their business and seize it and take it to where they want to go. And today, what we're going to be talking about is the changing landscape of law and how business owners can actually use that and how it affects them, because it's very important. So Noel's got a bunch of great information to share. And before we dive in, Noel, why don't you give a little bit of background about you and the outcomes that your business produces for business owners?
Okay, thanks a lot, Bryan. It's a pleasure to be here. I began my career in a large, big law firm, McDermott, Will & Emery. After working in the corporate securities department there for about 5 years, I moved in-house to a large consumer products conglomerate, Fortune Brands. At the time, they owned Jim Beam and Titleist and Moen Faucets and Masterlock and Swingline Staplers. It was a big consumer products company. I worked my way up through the legal department there. And then after Sarbanes-Oxley was passed as legislation affecting public companies, I became the first general counsel for a publicly traded company known as Zebra Technologies Corporation. Zebra is a manufacturer and marketer of barcode and RFID technologies. And I worked there as general counsel, built a legal department there. Internationally, we were in over 100 countries, Zebra was. And after 7 years, I left that company to become general counsel for North America of a Swedish manufacturing company known as De Laval. De Laval is a manufacturer of dairy farm equipment, and it's part of the very large multi-billion-dollar privately held Tetra Laval Group. I was there for 8 years, and in January of this year, I've launched General Counsel Practice, LLC. And as we'll see, GC Practice is designed to deliver a seasoned general counsel to small and mid-sized businesses that maybe need general counsel services, but aren't ready to hire one inside as a W-2 employee, and frankly, are reluctant to pay the big law firms the big hourly rates that they've been charging lately.
Oh, cool. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you just talked about that rock in the hard place that this changing law landscape is causing for these business owners. So why don't we talk about that? What's the rock and what's the hard place?
Well, you may have read recently that the big law firms, I'm sitting here in Chicago, law firms in Chicago are now paying their first year lawyers. These are lawyers that just graduated from law school. They're paying them $190,000 a year.
Wow.
The AmLaw 100, which is mainly the top 100 firms in the world, which for the most part is the top 100 firms in the US, made over $1 billion in revenue last year. When they're paying first-year associates $190,000, and clients like me, when I was a general counsel, refused to have young associates on my projects because they really don't know enough to have any value attributed to their work. These law firms have to pay that salary, but train the associates without really generating any income for the firm. So the law firms themselves are charging significant hourly rates for specialized lawyers. Let me just tell you that about 30 years ago, when the in-house legal trend began, when General Electric started moving lawyers in-house, they started responding to then the high cost of outside counsel by bringing generalists into the company, and started basically taking work away from the firms. And the law firms started becoming more and more specialized. And now they're basically conglomerates of specialized practices. And for the specialized practice, if you need bet the company litigation or a highly regulated, complex regulatory matter or a cross-border issue, they may very well be worth their considerable expense. But when a small or mid-cap business is dealing with everyday legal issues that come across their desk, whether it's commercial contracts or a dispute resolution with a customer or an employee matter or an OSHA inspection or just reviewing advertising or sales and marketing material, paying these outside law firms these specialized rates, which could peak over $1,000 an hour, becomes untenable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the rock. So what's the hard place? Well, the hard place is that, frankly, lawyers hired by companies are among the highest paid executives in a company.
Mm.
And getting more and more expensive, even to bring lawyers in-house. You've got salary, bonus, stock options or stock appreciation rights. You got incentives, other incentives. You got expense allocation. And then you've got things like, the benefits, healthcare insurance, for example. When you add all that up, it's getting to be almost economically unfeasible to hire a lawyer in-house as well. So you've got the rock, the outside lawyers and their expenses, and the hard place being the high cost of bringing a W-2 employee on board. So what do these small and mid-cap companies sometimes do? They're either A, paying way too much money for their routine legal matters, or B, they're taking on additional risk. They probably shouldn't do, because one trip over something that could have been easily avoided, and you may derail your entire strategic plan for the year. So against that whole backdrop, Bryan, is another trend that's interesting, and that is that general counsel and CEOs are getting younger, and the average age of a general counsel is about 54, but that's not the average age of someone who's hired as a GC.
Okay.
There are a number of former GCs who are deep in experience and steeped in judgment who are not working because they are not being hired by law firms because they don't have a book of business.
Oh, okay.
And they're not being hired as as a general counsel because, frankly, they're being aged out of those jobs. So there's a whole group of lawyers out there, intellectual capital, if you will, that's sitting on the sideline that can be leveraged for the benefit of these small and mid-cap companies that need a general counsel, but perhaps not on a full-time basis. And that's where I come to the type of service I think companies could start taking advantage of.
So I know there's companies out there that are used to outsourcing HR or outsourcing technology or, what we do, outsourcing VP of sales. But what you're saying now is there's a market being created or actually an untapped market that's there of this general counsel knowledge that businesses can leverage.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at, you're absolutely right. There, for years, for the last 10, maybe even 15 years, there's been outsourced CFOs.
Yeah, right.
CFOs for hire. There's large organizations that are offering chief marketing officers on an outsourced basis and chief technology officers on an outsourced basis. But you don't see general counsel yet being outsourced on a widespread basis. And part of that is regulatory, ethics-wise.
Okay.
A non-lawyer, a firm that's not owned by lawyers, is not ethically allowed to provide legal services to companies. So these same companies that own a CFO outsourcing group are prohibited in the U.S. from providing general counsel services because the owners of that CFO firm are not lawyers. You see companies like Ernst & Young that have large legal departments, but they don't offer those legal services in the U.S. They are only offered overseas because the U.S. regulatory environment does not yet allow it. However, there are going to be firms like mine who are owned by lawyers and are law firms that are going to retain former GCs to provide former GCs on a fractional basis. And law firms can do that because they're owned by lawyers. And in addition to, you're seeing these other C-suite organizations offering part-time CFOs or CMOs or CTOs, you are seeing a whole slew of contract lawyer services. And what those, you've heard of Axiom, for example, is an example. Mm-hmm. What these companies do is they provide lawyers on a part-time basis, a contract basis. But what they typically do is they're following kind of the specialist paradigm that's been created in the legal industry, and a company that may be looking for a technology licensing lawyer or a privacy lawyer will look to these companies to get a specialist in there for a particular project. But they typically are not placing a general counsel who would look at the business strategically and help a business owner, guide the business across a wide array of subject matters the way a general counsel can.
So the distinction there is, if somebody's thinking to themselves, well, I'm already hiring somebody out, like on this contract basis, what they're most likely doing is they're hiring that for a specific, like a transaction or a very specific thing, where what you're talking about, this is a strategic, not a tactical move.
That's right. Now, the former GCs like me and others can roll up their sleeves, certainly, and do legal work. And we do. I was general counsel of the $1 billion De Laval, and I was the only lawyer in the legal department. So a big part of what I did was literally rolling up my sleeves and negotiating and writing contracts. But by the same token, you're sitting in with the president and CEO, and you're talking to them about the strategy, and you're guiding them in ways that help them navigate risk. You're very operationally oriented, but you're also business focused. And so on the one hand, you could literally draft the contract or review the proposed advertising or help them with an OSHA inspection. But on the other hand, you're helping them kind of tweak their plans in a way that navigates acceptable risk.
And are you finding that the people that are the business owners that are leveraging this, do they already have some in place? Are they replacing a person? Are they bringing this on board as something new? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Well, the ideal candidate for this would be a company that's really spending too much money or taking too much risk, one or the other.
Got it.
And they have not yet pulled the trigger on hiring someone in-house. And maybe they want to see what kind of value they could generate from having a general counsel. So they get one for 2 days a week, or say 10 to 30 hours a week, where you don't have to worry about the meter running every time you pick up the phone. There's a fixed fee. And they get a sense of how the business would operate with a business-oriented general counsel helping them. However, there have been cases where you have a general counsel out on maternity leave, or you have a general counsel who is overwhelmed with too much work, and rather than hiring a second lawyer, might retain a former GC to come in and hit the ground running and help them for a period of time, as opposed to increasing that legal budget by using the outside lawyers.
Oh, I would have never thought that. And I think that's actually a great thing to bring up, because there always seems to be like business owners are at this point and they're trying to go there, and there's, they don't need all the people to fill all the roles and things. So this sounds like a great way to accent the in-between parts.
Yeah. And, very often when they are, legal savvy and they're using outside counsel, they sometimes will ask their outside law firms to second an associate at their business for a while when they have a significant amount of work they can't handle internally, but they don't want to follow the firm's traditional route of the billable hours and it going to the experts and paying too much. So they say, hey, why don't you give me a senior level associate and discount that steeply and have them sit at my offices 2 days a week. the model that I'm developing and that I think is going to take hold here may offer a former GCs to fill that role, because part of the issue is for the law firm is by the time you got a senior level associate, they were paying the first year associate 190,000 and not making any money. In fact, losing money on that individual during the year. By the time you have a senior level associate, they're money makers for the law firms. The last thing they want to do, typically, from an economic standpoint, is put them in a company at a steep discount. Now, they do it, the smart ones do it because it creates some stickiness with the client. It's a value add service, and I encourage law firms to do it. I think it's a great way to learn more about the client business, to learn about their risk tolerances, to learn about their strategic goals, and then help them. And then when the big stuff comes in, the law firm hopefully will get that work.
Mm-hmm.
But the law firms are reluctant to do it because of the cost. What they can do with firms like mine is they could retain general counsel practice or a firm like it and put a general counsel into that role, into that secondee role, where the client for general counsel practice would be the law firm. And so any additional work that comes in would flow back to the law firm, because that's where I would have the client relationship, and they could get all the benefits of a secondment without losing that high value associate for the billable hours that he could be generating in normal work. So there are ways to work this through a law firm. The problem that I've seen is that law firms are often reluctant to take innovative steps. They know what works, and as I said at the beginning, they're very profitable right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes difficult for them to move in creative and innovative directions when they look at their economic landscape and see nothing but roses.
Well, what I think you're explaining to me, though, is a way that business owners can have their cake and eat it too, and by innovating how they buy attorney services. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, what I would say to small and medium-sized businesses, especially those that are in fact getting legal advice but are paying too much for it, is ask your law firms to provide more of those services for free. Now, I know that sounds a little outrageous,
a little crazy,
but here's what I'm saying. A big bill rarely costs a law firm a relationship. The businesses expect the big bills. You've got a big piece of litigation, you've got a big transaction, you got a complicated matter, you budget for a big bill and you get a big bill. You understand it's going to come, it comes with the territory. What kills a relationship is the nickel and dime stuff. Where you can't really budget for it. You don't really understand why they're charging you for that. For example, if you're a small business owner and you feel like your sales department could use some training, you should ask your law firm to provide that training for free. The law firm should want to do that because that creates them, it sets them up as a resource for your people. It allows them to showcase their expertise to your business. And so it's a value add that they should be willing to provide. Now, of course, if something comes out of that you see requires legal help, I would say it's incumbent upon the client to feed that work back to the law firm, because of what they did at no charge. But you should ask them for training. If you want them to provide some templates for you on contracts that have become routine, things you do over and over again, they should be able to provide some template work for you at no charge or steeply reduced charge. If you're doing a new venture on a 50-state service, a 50-state level or multi-state project, let's say you're gathering personal data from people across multiple states. There are plenty of law firms that have already done the 50-state surveys and keep them updated. Find a firm that will give you that information for free. They've already done it. They shouldn't be reinventing the wheel and charging you for that. Then, of course, if something comes up, a data breach, for example, you're more likely to give it back to them. My point is that law firms need to think about becoming a resource for the client, and the clients need to ask for them to become a resource. the more, like with any business, in any sales organization, when you can become a resource for someone, you're going to become more valuable to that person. You're
Mm-hmm.
more tested and credible. And I call this the small stuff. You know, there was that book back in the 90s, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff,
Yep.
and it's all small stuff.
Yep.
I would say to law firm providers, don't sweat the small stuff, because it is not all small stuff. What the law firms want and what they survive on, and the reason why they're doing so well, they want the big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the law firms need to not sweat the small stuff. And therein lies the leverage that you have, your businesses have, your people who are watching this video or that listening to this audio have. They've got a lot of small stuff. They may think it's big, but if it's not a giant multi-state litigation or a complex regulatory matter or a cross-border issue or a complex patent that has to be drafted, the law firms view that as small stuff.
Yep.
You need to ask them to do that stuff at no cost or significantly reduced cost. And if they don't, you need to start looking at alternative legal service providers, whether it's a contract lawyer with that specialty, or a firm, an emerging firm like General Counsel Practice that could put a general counsel in there and do that for a fixed fee. You know what you're getting, you know what you're paying. You don't have any meter running every time you pick up the phone. You need to find an alternative way to get that work done.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing that, because it's one thing that I firmly believe in, is that every industry is changing and you either adapt or die, right? I mean, and you know, law firms have the opportunity to do that, because what it sounds like is that these business owners are going to have the ability to choose a resource like yourself, and not use those law firms moving forward.
Well, and here's the little known secret. If you ask, they'll grant it.
Yeah, right. Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah, they want the stickiness. They want the relationship. They don't lead with it. They lead with the $1,000 an hour,
Yep.
and hey, we're worth it because we're the best. But if you ask, and you, especially if you have a history of working with them and paying them money for the services they're getting, some of those services you might say, you know what, enough. You should be doing this sort of work for me at no cost. You know, let's say you have a business meeting downtown and you need a place for a confidential meeting. Ask the law firm for a conference center. I am sitting right now in the conference center of a big law firm.
Oh,
because
awesome.
I used the law firm for many years as general counsel of the firms I used to be with. And now when I need a conference room, I have one available. They provide it to me at no charge. Let me give you another quick example. The same firm that's giving me this conference room, they've done a number of things right. As a general counsel, and this could equally apply to a CFO or CEO. Let's say you have something gnawing at you, something's bothering you, you're not exactly sure of the approach you need to take from a legal standpoint. You have a pretty good idea that this is how you're going to navigate this risk, this liability, this potential liability, but you're not sure if it's correct or if there's a better way to do it. You should be able to pick up the phone and gut check your approach with your lawyer at the law firm, or get a specialist on the phone on that topic. Let's say it's an antitrust issue. You're going to be meeting with a competitor, and there's a little concern there from an antitrust point of view. And here's how you're going to approach it. You want to talk to an antitrust lawyer about that, but you don't want to incur a big fee. You just want to gut check something with them. The call's going to take maybe 10, 15 minutes. You should be able to have that conversation without getting a 10 to 15 minute bill.
I love it.
Okay? Because they become a valuable resource to you in that sense. If you're thinking of calling them for that, you can bet when something big happens, you'll also think about calling them. So the law firm should be incented to have those conversations. You'd be surprised how many don't do that. And the point I'm making is I had that relationship with the firm I'm sitting in right now.
Wow.
And for years, I would call this lawyer or that lawyer and talk for 10, 15 minutes before going into a meeting, kind of gut checking the advice I was going to give, and never got a bill.
Hmm.
Then one day, the parent company of D. Laval, Tetra Laval, called and said, "Hey, we're looking for an antitrust counsel for one of your sister companies in the U.S. for a big case that's coming up. Do you know anyone?" Who did I think of? I thought
Exactly.
of the antitrust lawyer that I talked to all the time.
Hmm.
And he ended up getting a multi-year complex litigation that generated significant revenue for the firm. And I ask you, was the firm better off providing me with that kind of water cooler talk for 10, 15 minutes at no charge? Or should they have just given me a coffee mug with their logo on it?
I love it.
Right?
You're so right.
Yeah. And so it pays off. And
Mhm.
so, but you do have to ask. They're not going to just do it with, you'll get the bill and you have to say, no, I don't want to pay for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, no, I appreciate you being on because you were a great resource for the listeners and the viewers on here. So we are going to post all of your information wherever this is posted, whether it's an audio or a video. So, but why don't you share with people how they can find you and how they can contact you before we kind of end here?
Well, my website is www.gcpractice.com, and I can be reached at noel.elfant@gcpractice.com, or you could find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, again, grateful you were on today, and what a fabulous resource for all of the listeners and viewers. And I appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode of the Seize Your Business podcast. Again, my name's Bryan McDonald from OnPurpos Growth, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And I'll see everybody on the next episode that we have. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching our video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Click the subscribe button for new videos every week, and download and review us on iTunes. Visit learn-about-law.com for other legal-related articles and videos. Visit our business podcast and video blog, seizeyourbusiness.com, and visit Making Real Estate Fun for real estate videos and podcasts. Call us at 630-324-6666 for a free consultation.